putting yourself out there and meeting people can be scary as all get out. I'm here to tell everybody listening who might be trying to deal with it and get through it, it's worth it. It's worth the effort. If you keep at it, that small circle of friends starts to grow. And then with a little luck, maybe you'll find as you keep putting it, you're player 2.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex and I help shy introverted nerds get over their fears and anxieties to find their player 2. Today I bring you Frank, aka Uncle Greyhawk, a nerd who found his player 2, and we're going to talk about how they ended up together. The idea is to address some of your questions, dispel some myths, and hear about the many different ways that nerds can find real relationships. Frank, thank you so much for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So, first question first. What makes you a nerd?
Oh, Lord. That's honestly, I come from a line of nerds. My grandfather was one of the first television repair people in his section of the country. My dad was the one who introduced me to non-mass market board games, like the Avalon Hill Bookshelf series, some war games. My mom introduced me to The Hobbit when I was 7 or 8, and like yourself, I'm a longtime fan of The Professor. And I have been into fantasy literature and board gaming and role-playing games for probably 40 years or more now. Literature for even longer. I've even worked in some small capacity with the demo teams for several game companies. So, long-time nerd and multifaceted as well.
A few generations of nerd. That's the first time I've heard it, to be honest. Everyone was like, when I was a child, when I was in high school, you're like, my grandfather.
I come by it honestly. What can I say?
I love it. So tell me about your wife. When did you meet her?
Well, we met in college in the late 80s. And our accounts differ a little here. Her first recollection of meeting me was actually in the theater scene shop. Apparently, I was taking some lumber down off a rack and almost hit her in the head. I
Sounds
don't
romantic.
remember this. Right? I don't remember this. Okay, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. It means that I was probably, in the process of working and fine. My first recollection of our meeting was actually at the college role-playing game that weekend. She was brought by her friend, her roommate, and that was the first time we met.
Do you know what she thought about? Like, did she remember you because you almost killed her, or did she remember you because she thought you were cute?
Probably the former. Okay. But being a rather large person, I am also somewhat memorable. I'm 6'3" at that time, probably over 280. But she remembered me then, and over the course of the next year or so, we became friends through the gaming club and through some theater projects. And I remember being interested. I thought she was attractive. But at the time she was engaged. And at that time, and even still to me, that's it. Okay, you're engaged, hands off. I it's cool. And we became good friends. So,
you said that she was brought to the role-playing club by a friend.
Yes.
Why? What did you join the role? I mean, I'm guessing you're a nerd, so for you it was just
no. I found the group very early in college. The college had an afternoon set up where the various clubs, groups, sororities, fraternities, what have you. all came, they were all had a table in this one central location, and they were, hey, this is who we are. This is what we do. Come join us, type of thing. And I found the role-playing group there. I was a member of that group throughout my 4 years of school there.
Right. So you didn't join saying, hey, I want to find someone to date. You were just like, this is what I do. This is what my whole family has been doing for generations.
This was not so much a dating thing. This was hey, these are my, fellow nerds. Cool. And, if it works out that way, fine.
Yeah. Do you know from her side why?
She came along because she had heard about it, but heard about role-playing games, but had never really experienced them,
right.
and was curious. She's also a fan of fantasy fiction, so she was, it was something that sounded interesting, and she decided to tag along to see what it was about, and ended up staying with the group for the next 2 years before she graduated.
Okay, cool. So you guys met at the club. And you said you became friends. How did that come up? Were you like doing group things outside of the club, or what were you doing that you became friends?
Part of it was in club, of course, and then part of it was, we got together outside of the club. The group was a fairly close group of people. There's only about maybe a dozen of us, if that, and we would get together outside and do different things. A lot of us were also active in theater program. So we saw each other, working on shows. And as I said, at that time, I was fortunate enough to have a friend, in Mouse. And, later, she was 2 years ahead of me at school, so she graduated before I did. But she was fairly close that she would still come up to the campus once in a while, hang out, play games, what have you. While in the club, I did get into a relationship with another person who I found through the role-playing club, through the club. Right. But that lasted about 2 years. I graduated and that relationship ended. And it was one of those, it had run its course, and both of us, moved on. I stayed in touch with Mouse, for a few years. I ended up, moving from East Coast, to Colorado for a year. I came back and, she invited me down to her place for a long weekend. And I'm like, okay, I haven't seen you in a while. Cool. And so I came down.
All this time you were not in touch, right?
We were in touch occasionally. I mean, occasional phone call, occasional letter. This is pre-email.
Right. Was she still engaged? Still
no, that broke off. If I remember correctly, that ended just after she graduated. I don't know the details, and I've never seen any reason to pursue them. So,
yeah, for sure.
So as I was saying, I moved back to the East Coast from Colorado, and we were talking on the phone. She said, "Why don't you come down for a weekend?" I'm like, "Okay, I've got nothing on my schedule, so sure, I'll come down." So I came down. We went out, shot some pool with some friends of hers on Saturday night. Sunday, I was making dinner for us, and we were sitting in the kitchen, and we're talking about, I don't remember exactly what, and she says, "There's something I wanted to give you." And she hands me these two little, like 2-inch by 3-inch laminated poetry cards, like you would find in a stationery store, card store. Okay. And the first of them was entitled "Longtime Friend." The second of these cards was entitled All I Want Is You. And then she proceeds to tell me that while we were shooting pool, she was talking with one of her friends when I was out of earshot, and her friend had asked her, "So what exactly is Frank to you?" And Mouse says she responded, "He's the person I'm probably going to marry someday." This had the effect of taking a 2x4 and breaking it over my head for a moment. I was a little stunned. And again, part of that is, once upon a time I had been romantically interested, but that wasn't to be at the time, and that was fine. And now everything has shifted again. And the only thing I could think to do at that moment is, let me check to make sure dinner's not burning.
You did that?
I did, and it wasn't. So
okay,
there's
good.
that.
Good.
But yes, that's kind of where was kind of the kickoff of our relationship.
So were you still interested, like when you went down to her place?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
And after I, was able to get my thoughts back together, I said, look, I need to tell you this. I understand you would like to start a relationship. I need to think about it a little.
Okay.
Because I need to make sure not only that I, first of all, wanted a long distance relationship because we were about 3 hours apart. But also that I was still interested in that fashion. And she's like, fine, I understand you should take the time. And so I went home on Monday and thought about it on this drive home, because really there's nothing to do much except think when you're driving for 3 hours. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. And then we talked a couple days later, and I said, you're willing to give this long distance relationship a shot? So am I. And she said, well, yeah, let's see where it goes. And that was sort of the official start of the relationship at that point.
So had you noticed any signs of any kind that she liked you? Like, did you see anything, or was it like... sorry, let me rephrase.
Yeah.
Was she trying to give you signs and you were not seeing them?
That's more likely.
Yeah.
That's more likely, because I'm the person around that notices everyone else's signs towards each other, right? Yeah. I'm like, how do you not see that? When it comes to me, blind. I
think many of us are like that.
Yeah. And I suspect part of that is just, especially being a nerd in the 80s, it was less socially acceptable than it is today. I got a fair amount of crap, even though, I was the size I am. And, I think a lot of people tend to say, oh, they can't possibly be talking to me, or if they are trying to flirt with me, it's to set me up for something. And I think it can be really hard for people to shake that. Yeah. Heaven knows, I don't think I have, and I'm, in my mid-50s. It's been a while. So, yeah. But yes, I'm the one who I can see, anyone else, oh, dude, if she was flirting with you any harder, she'd have laid you on your back. When it comes to me, never see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's also sometimes the fear of, like, is she just being nice? Like, is she this nice to everybody? Like, she's being
Yeah.
nice to me. She can't be flirting, right? And also, it often happens the other way, right? I've seen from many women complaining like, "Oh, I was just being nice with the guy, and he thought that I was flirting." So
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
yeah. So I can see that as a nerd, we don't expect it, and therefore we assume that she's just being nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's also I think there might also in some cases be if I assume that she's just being nice, I'm not setting myself up for disappointment.
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah. So in the end, it took at least one of you to actually say it. And the way she did it, I think, was pretty nice as well.
Yeah. She was the one who made the initial move on the relationship. And I think we've been very fortunate because in this case, we had 5-6 years of friendship, of knowing each other, and getting to understand each other's quirks, or the good and the bad, right? And it sort of lessened or shortened the discovery of each other because we already knew a lot of it, and we knew to some degree, at least, as opposed to just blindly meeting up or whatever. Or, we started a relationship back in college without knowing what some of those quirks were, and avoiding some of those, maybe avoiding some of those pitfalls.
Yeah. At least you know what you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
Or at least have some idea.
You're right. Exactly. You have some idea. You may not know everything, but
yeah,
you've got a better idea than maybe otherwise.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I had many of the other interviews that I did. It was pretty much the same story, right? It's like, we've been friends for a long time, and then started dating, and that actually set like a really good foundation for the relationship later, because you already know you have things in common. You already know that you enjoyed spending time with each other, and
Yes.
and that's a completely different thing than just swipe, match, date, done.
Yeah, agreed. We both knew some of the other person's likes and dislikes, where we matched on them, and where we don't. I'm also a fan of the horror genre, and Mouse is definitely not. So it's good to know the things that I think that the other person doesn't like as well. Even if you do like them, you can always work to a compromise or, an arrangement where, especially, for example, during, October, where I do enjoy some horror movies, I just make sure I'm either in another room watching them or whatever, and then the things we enjoy together, we do.
Yeah. And that's the same with any hobby, anything. Like, you don't have to find a nerd who's exactly into the same fandom as yours. As long as you share some things, you can share those things and then do your own separately. Like, it doesn't really have to be 100% of the time, 100% of activities, right?
As a matter of fact, I would tell people it's good for you to have your own interests that don't necessarily match with your partner's, because I've also seen relationships where the relationship got strained because they were spending too much time together. They were not having any time for themselves. They were not having any time kind of away. And I think that, allowing yourself and allowing your partner to have time for those things that they're interested in, but you may not be, is not only good and healthy, I think it's necessary almost, just so that they have the opportunity to explore their interests. And you've got yours too. And you need to be able to explore those as well.
And I think that also applies to friends as well. Many of the people that I talk to, they're like, I don't have any friends and I'm looking for a partner. And I'm like, well, let's start getting you friends.
Yeah.
And then a partner, because you also need friends.
Very much so. And in that respect, we've been we were very fortunate. That we had, our own friend groups, our mutual friends where those groups intersected.
I just want to go back to the role playing club. In my Discord, I have a guy who he recently started dating someone he met at a lightsaber dueling club in college.
Nice.
And every time I tell people, like, just pursue any hobby, go make friends through things that you like, and you might either meet someone through the hobby itself, or maybe a friend of someone that you met through there, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes people understand that what I'm saying is make it seem like you want to make friends so that nobody realizes that you're actually looking for a date, and that's not what I'm saying.
No, that approach doesn't work, like, ever. So one of the other things I do is I help run small fan conventions, or get small gaming conventions. I've been doing that for probably close to 30 years. But I have seen a number of long-term relationships spark or get their start because they went to, hey, this event sounds cool. They're going to be talking about, I don't know, Doctor Who or, Tolkien or fantasy literature in general or whatever. And somehow in the course of that, they started talking, and, the relationships developed from there. It was the getting out and meeting people that was the hardest part. And these people weren't out. None of them were out looking for, their player two. None of them were out looking for a relationship. They were just out because this thing was happening. It sounded cool. And they went and checked it out. And lo and behold, after a couple, maybe it wasn't at the first one they went to, maybe it was at a subsequent one, but they kept going. They kept going out to have fun. They made friends, and eventually they met their significant other. And I've been very fortunate to have witnessed several dozen of those relationships blossom and grow over the years.
Yeah. And I think the key there is they went to do something that they enjoyed. They met people and they made friends. Right.
Exactly. There was no expectation that they were going to go and find their significant other, new player two there. They were going out to meet people and to enjoy, the company of other people that had a shared interest.
Yeah.
And, there was no other expectation than that.
Yeah. And often you can tell those people who have those expectations and who are only looking for someone to date, like you can smell them a mile away. For them, usually.
Yes. Unfortunately. I shouldn't say unfortunately. I will give them some credit because they're trying. They're at least putting themselves out there, even if it's not in the most optimal manner. So getting out there is the goal. I think making the friends should be the goal, not I'm going to find the right person by going here.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, a lot of people will pick up on that and it turns them off. because that's not what they're looking for. But if you're there to enjoy the subject matter, if you're there to just meet people, make friends, bond over a common interest. A lot of times I've seen it where it just comes naturally. Things naturally develop. But if you try to push it too hard, it has a tendency to not work like you want it to.
Yeah, because it's not the place for that.
Correct.
Right? Like if you go to a bar, you go to a club, that's a mid-market. Everybody knows what you're there for. You're fine. But if you go to a convention, if you go to a role-playing club, to whatever it is, that's not what people are going there for. And so it stands out.
Correct. So if there was anything there, it's just go, try to relax, try to enjoy yourself, meet people, and enjoy their company. And enjoy that, your shared love of whatever it is.
Yeah. And something that you mentioned, which I highlight quite often, is don't stick to the event itself. Like, because I asked you and you mentioned, like, with the role-playing club, you guys went and hung out outside of the club. You're doing things outside of there, right? It's not like you go to the activity and then leave and that's it. At some point, if you want to develop deeper relationships, friends, something else, you have to sort of get out of the main, I call it a container, right? So like the excuse that brought you together, and start talking about other topics, more personal topics, go and do things outside. And either you can initiate it or you can join if someone else initiates. And I think that's a key to start building your social network. And that's something that you mentioned. That's why I wanted to highlight it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If with the role playing game club, a lot of us, not surprisingly, a number of us are also drawn to theater. But then it started being, hey, let's go over to local diner. Let's grab something to eat. Right. Hey, do you want to go? We're getting a group together, go see this movie, or go see this, do this thing on campus or whatever. And that's how you learn more about the other people. You get closer as friends. You find out, what everyone likes and dislikes. You find out their interests, what other interests you have in common. And that's very much how good relationships develop. It's spending time getting to know each other. Hopefully there's shared interests. I mean, a number of the people in that role-playing game club that I found, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, are still some of my closest friends to this day. Matter of fact, we just got together over the holidays for a couple hours. We haven't seen each other, a number of us are fortunately fairly close right now geographically, so one of them was able to host, but we still keep in touch. And it's, again, these are people whose friendship I treasure to this day. Some of my oldest and closest friends.
Yeah. I have the same with the Tolkien Association back in Argentina. Like, that was 20 something years ago, and still, like, one of the hosts that I interviewed, we pretty much text or message every 2-3 days whenever she doesn't have her kids all over her. Like, sometimes she's like, I have 10 minutes. Want to talk? Sure. Calls me 10 minutes. Okay, done. I have to go pick up whatever.
Right.
And that came from those groups, right? That came from saying, hey, we all like Tolkien. And then let's go do this thing and let's go do that thing. And then it just starts drifting. And an episode that will have already come out before this one is about our experience within the Tolkien Association. And we were mentioning that those people who only went there or mainly clearly when they're looking for dates, they were really missing out, right? Because like I was saying, I was really good friends with a friend of mine, and this guy fancied her, but he would only talk to her. Meanwhile, I was going to her house to a friend's meeting and hanging out at her house. He could have joined. But because he wasn't there for the same reasons that we were, which was making friends, then he wasn't getting invited.
Right. And it's unfortunate when that happens. Not necessarily even because this person basically he lost out, in my opinion. He lost out on friendships. He lost out on relationships with other people that from what I've heard from the episodes of yours I've listened to, that have lasted quite a while. And I don't want to say I feel sorry for him because that's not accurate, but I never like to see or hear of someone who maybe has lost out on the opportunity for friendship. And I always think that somebody has unfortunately maybe missed an opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's sort of like, I don't want to say desperation, but like hyper focusing on one outcome. Like we're saying, like having expectations. I mean, like, this is what I want, and everything else doesn't matter. Whereas if you realize that by meeting more people, by being more social, you're going to get so many better outcomes in all aspects of your life, including dating. Right.
Without question. And again, kind of use an example from my own life. That mutual friend who brought Mouse to her first meeting of the role-playing group, years later, actually helped me get a job working professional technical theater.
Yeah.
She knew I was looking for something that's like, look, we need bodies, and I know you're good. Come down here and interview, which I did. But if you had told me, back when we first met, that, one day they're going to help you get a job that will allow you to move down to be by your future wife. Yeah, I would have been like, okay, sure, whatever. But that's,
let me just roll some dice.
Right. Exactly. Hush and roll to hit.
Yeah.
But that's the way life worked. And that's the way life sometimes works, is the friendships and relationships that you cultivate through whatever source. Sometimes later in life, somebody lets you know, hey, there's a job. Hey, there's this happening. Hey, there's that happening. And you're able to have more experiences that will help you, that will enrich your life, that will help chart your path.
Yeah.
And it was just because you went to this one event with the intent of, hey, I want to meet people. And that happens a lot more than people think it does.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, so nowadays everyone's focused on dating apps. I don't get any matches, dating sucks. And I'm like, what's your social life like? Well, I go to work, I go to the gym, I'm fit. That's not a social life.
That's a nice description, but that's not a social life.
Exactly. And even though your story is from quite some time ago, it still applies now. Whether it is through Discord, through threads, through whatever it is, it still applies today. Dating apps are not.
Absolutely. It's putting yourself out there, making friends. It doesn't matter the medium. It doesn't matter the location. It doesn't,
or the gender,
not completely. And I will be one of the first to admit, putting yourself out there and meeting people can be scary as all get out. Okay. Especially if you're dealing with social anxiety. I get it. As much as, I've been fortunate in my life, I've also dealt with social anxiety, and I've managed, maybe not in the best means, but to get myself through a lot of it. Okay. And, but putting yourself out there can be scary. I'm here to tell everybody listening who might be trying to deal with it and get through it, it's worth it. It's worth the effort. Okay. Yes, I think you will find sometimes there will be less than desirable results. It happens. But if you keep at it, that small circle of friends starts to grow because you meet other people through them. And then with a little luck, maybe you'll find, as you keep putting it, you're player 2. But the key is to keep putting yourself out there, have a social life, meet people, hang out with people. I'm not saying that every day you got to go hanging at a diner or something, right? Or going to the movies every day, or, whatever. But you have to be able to put yourself out there. You have to be able to meet people, make friends, cultivate relationships. And what happens, happens. There's no magic spell. There's no combination lock. There's nothing like that out there. It's, you put yourself out there, you make the friends, and life takes its course.
I love it. Yeah. Were you dealing with social anxiety when you joined the club?
Probably.
Okay.
It wasn't really I don't think that was really recognized as such of a thing in the late 80s, early 90s. But if I think back on it, probably to some degree, yes. Again, especially, I grew up as a nerd in a time when it was not really socially acceptable. So you learn to kind of mask or hide some of that, especially in high school, the ultimate bastion of conformity. So yeah, I think if I'm look back on it, yeah, probably. And as I say, I'm not sure I used what would be a very good method to get through it, which is basically my yelling at myself, telling myself, just do it anyway and shut up and quit your whining. Okay. Not a method I recommend.
I would say it's an old school method used for men.
Yes. And you're not wrong. But it's what got me out there.
Okay.
And for better or worse, I can't be upset with myself for going that route, because I did make myself get through it one way or another. And the method that worked for me was not one I would recommend, or I think anyone else would recommend. now. But I would also say, if you believe you are, dealing, if you are having problems, if it is with the social anxiety, please find someone to help. Because I promise you it's worth it in the end. There are, whether it's another friend, whether you seek professional counseling, whatever, please try to find whatever means works for you to work around it, past it, or through it. Because I want you to have positive relationships in your life with friends. I want you to eventually find your player too. I would love for everyone listening to be able to find their someone and have something of the blessed life I've been able to experience. I have a very good group of friends. I've have a relationship that's entered into a marriage that will be 29 years later this year. We have 2 kids and a bunch of our kids' friends who have adopted us as their parents. And it's all because I went to and found this one. I put myself out there, and it took a long time to get to this point, but here we are.
Yeah. And like you said, maybe the means you use would not be recommended anymore, but still getting out there was the key. Like, and even like it, I mean, a role-playing club is a small group. You mentioned 12 people.
Yeah.
And you have a specific purpose that everyone goes and does the thing. You don't have to think too much about like what to say, what to ask, and what are going to be like what people are going to think. So I would say it's sort of like a safe-ish place if you want to get started that way.
I think that's a fair description. I think it's because it's an environment where I had an idea at least of what was expected of me, right? We go, we play the game, I do the things that my character would, do. And it continued from there. That, as I said, some of these people are, I've known for many, many years. I'm still some of my closest friends.
That's amazing. Frank, thanks so much. Before we wrap up, so your wife is right now going through chemo. You have a GoFundMe. I'm going to include the link in the description. Everything is welcome. Frank, do you want to add anything about that?
Yeah. So for the last 9 months, Mouse has been fighting stage 4 cancer. She's not been able to work at that time during that time. Fortunately, my job has given us access to decent insurance, so it's not, the costs aren't crippling us. But especially now at the beginning of the year where everything resets, so we're only on one income at the moment. But she's fighting, and we'll have a better idea later this week of where the fight stands. So if you can donate, I know these are difficult times for everyone. I understand that. It is greatly appreciated, and I thank you for it. But again, even if you cannot or are not able to, it's not a problem, and I understand, and still hope that you find your player too. And I hope that maybe something I said helps you do that.
Thank you so much, Frank. This has been amazing. I'm sure it will be super valuable for everybody.
Thank you again for having me on.
Thank you. And everyone else, take care and go donate.